The crimson sky of Varian 6 burned over the jagged mountains and scorched plains, a world of fire and stone. Queen Liara of the Zitherian Empire stood atop a cliff, her armored troops spread across the battlefield below. Her eyes, sharp and commanding, scanned the chaos as explosions lit the horizon. This was a war she had fought countless times, yet today something felt different. "Hold the line." Liara's voice rang, metallic and strong, carrying over the roar of the conflict. Her elite guards, 1,000 of the most loyal Zitherian warriors, moved with precision, forming protective barriers and striking down enemies with deadly accuracy. The rival faction, the Vorid clan, had launched a sudden assault, but Liara's forces had been trained for this. Victory should have been hers, but betrayal hides in the shadows. As the battle raged, subtle shifts began among her troops. Orders were ignored. Guards hesitated. Weapons wavered mid-strike. At first, Liara thought it was fear, but then a chilling realization hit her. Signals she had sent were being intercepted, not by the enemy, but by her own soldiers. "Commander." "Vash," she barked to her lieutenant, but the man's eyes were cold, unyielding. "Why are you holding back?" Vash's voice was calm, almost too calm. "With respect, Your Majesty, we cannot follow orders that risk the Empire further. We must choose survival over loyalty." Liara's heart froze. Betrayal? Here, now, in the midst of battle? "No," she shouted. "We fight together. You swore your allegiance to the crown." But her words fell on deaf ears. One by one, her elite guards lowered their weapons. Some even turned to join the enemy. The battlefield erupted with confusion. Liara's forces were collapsing from within. The enemy, sensing weakness, advanced with merciless precision. Amid the chaos, a heavy explosion threw Liara from the cliff edge. She landed in a narrow ravine, the sharp rocks cutting through her armor, leaving her battered and bleeding. She struggled to rise, vision blurred. The sounds of battle echoed above her, shouts, explosions, the cries of both her enemies and former allies. She was alone, truly alone, abandoned by the troops she had trusted most. "Queen Liara," a voice called softly from the shadows. Liara squinted through the dust and smoke. A figure emerged, moving with careful speed. He wore a uniform unlike any Zitherian armor. Sleek, gray, and human-made, it was equipped for protection and mobility, rather than intimidation. In his hand he held a plasma rifle, pointed not at her but at the approaching enemies. "Step back," he commanded, voice steady. His accent was strange, mechanical in its clarity, but it carried authority. "You're not safe here. Follow me." Liara hesitated. The human's eyes were different from Zitherians she had known, soft yet resolute, burning with courage and determination. Against all odds, she felt a glimmer of hope. How did you get here?" she asked, struggling to rise. "I am Captain Eli Mercer of the United Earth Peacekeeping Force," he replied. "I'm here to stop the battle from spreading. You're not supposed to be alone in this, and you're not going to be." Liara tried to speak, but coughing from the dust made her falter. Eli extended a hand, helping her to her feet. His strength was surprising for a human, but more than that, it was his confidence, his unwavering bravery that steadied her. The enemy was closing in, and the ravine offered little protection. Eli assessed the situation quickly. "We have to move. I know a safe path through the northern cliffs. Can you walk?" Liara nodded weakly, leaning on him as they climbed jagged rocks and dodged falling debris. She could hear the chaos behind them, shouts of betrayal, the clash of weapons, and the distant roar of explosions. Yet, through it all, Eli's presence was a shield of calm in a world gone mad. Hours passed as they moved through treacherous terrain. Liara, despite her injuries, could not help but observe the human. He was not a soldier trained for power or domination, yet his intelligence, resourcefulness, and quick thinking allowed them to survive. He set traps for predators, found clean water, and fashioned makeshift bandages for her wounds using alien foliage. At one point, Liara stumbled and nearly fell into a deep chasm. Eli caught her just in time, gripping her hand tightly. "I won't let you fall," he said simply. There was no arrogance, no fear, just determination. Liara felt a strange emotion she had not known in years: trust. Night fell over the desolate world, turning the red sky to a dark violet. The air was cold, and the wind carried ash and dust. Eli found a small cave to shelter in. He tended to Liara's wounds carefully, his hands precise and gentle despite the rough conditions. "You, humans," Liara said quietly. "You are different from what I expected." Eli smiled faintly, adjusting her armor. "Different how?" "Strong, clever, brave," she admitted. "And yet, you protect instead of conquer." Eli shrugged. "We do what we must to help each other survive. That's what courage means to us." Liara's heart, still heavy from betrayal, felt a flicker of warmth. For the first time in her life, she realized that not all allies were born from loyalty or bloodlines. Some were forged in courage, kindness, and the willingness to act when others failed. Outside the cave, the world remained dangerous. Betrayal and battle raged across the plains, but inside, Liara felt a moment of peace. She knew the road ahead would be difficult. Survival alone on this planet was not enough. She would need allies, strategy, and perhaps lessons from this unexpected human, and perhaps she thought this human was more than a protector. Perhaps he was the beginning of something new for her empire, something stronger, brighter, and more hopeful. The night grew darker, but in the cave, a flicker of hope burned between a fallen queen and a brave human soldier. The world had turned against her. But for the first time, Liara did not feel entirely alone. The first light of dawn spilled over the jagged mountains of Varian 6, painting the crimson rocks in a pale orange glow. Queen Liara woke to the cold biting through her armor. Eli Mercer had already prepared a small fire outside the cave, using dry branches and strange alien stones to create a stable flame. He was already examining the map of the surrounding terrain, eyes sharp, thinking ahead. "You slept well?" Eli asked, glancing over his shoulder. Liara hesitated. Sleep had been uneasy, filled with the images of betrayal from her own troops. "As well as one can, after being abandoned by thousands of soldiers," she replied. Her voice held pride, but also a hint of vulnerability. Eli chuckled softly. "Then you need to move. Staying here will only put you in danger. The enemy patrols will be back before nightfall." Liara nodded, trusting him despite her doubts. She had spent her life commanding armies, making decisions that decided the fate of millions. Yet now she followed a human, a soldier from another world, unfamiliar with her culture, yet somehow more reliable than her own guards. They moved carefully through the rocky terrain. Each step was calculated. Eli showed her how to read the ground for danger, how the patterns of alien foliage indicated the presence of predators, how footprints in the red dust could reveal an approaching threat long before it arrived. Liara followed his instructions, her queenly pride battling with the necessity of obedience. By midday, they reached a small stream that cut through the scorched land. Eli crouched and tasted the water, then motioned for Liara to do the same. He had fashioned a crude filter from leaves and stones, ensuring it was safe to drink. Liara marveled silently at the human's resourcefulness. On her own planet, she had armies and machines. Here, survival depended on wit, agility, and courage, qualities Eli had in abundance. As they ate their meager rations, Liara watched Eli carefully. "On your planet, do humans always act with such calmness in danger?" she asked. Eli smiled. "We try. Fear is normal, but we survive by thinking, not panicking. It's not just about strength, it's about using what you have." Quickly and smartly, Liara frowned, considering his words. Her Zetherian training emphasized strength, loyalty, and discipline, but humans, she realized, approached problems in a different way. They adapted, improvised, and acted decisively, even without armies. Their journey continued. The sun rose higher, scorching the land. Acid rain fell briefly, forcing them to take shelter under overhanging rocks. Eli covered Liara with a waterproof tarp he had constructed from alien leaves. "You can't always fight nature. Sometimes you have to work with it," he said. Hours later, they encountered the first of Varian 6's predators, large lizard-like creatures with sharp claws and glowing eyes. Liara instinctively reached for her weapon, but Eli raised a hand. "Wait. Watch their behavior," he whispered. "They hunt in patterns. If we move slowly and stay downwind, they won't notice us." Liara obeyed, crouching beside him. The creatures prowled, sniffing the air. Slowly, carefully, they slipped past the predators without being detected. For Liara, it was a revelation. Humans could survive by thinking, not only by fighting. As night approached, the temperature dropped sharply. They found a small overhang and settled in for the night. Eli began repairing her armor with basic tools and alien materials, smoothing rough edges and fixing cracks. Liara watched him work, feeling a sense of admiration she had never felt before. "You make this look easy," she said quietly. Eli shrugged. "Experience teaches you shortcuts. Humans survive by learning fast and helping each other. That's what keeps us alive in worlds like this." Liara felt a strange warmth. She had been betrayed by her own troops, abandoned by those she had trusted most. Yet here, in this harsh alien world, a human, an out. The jagged cliffs of Varian 6 stretched high into the sky, casting long shadows over the alien wilderness. Queen Liara and Eli Mercer moved carefully along the narrow paths, each step a balance between caution and speed. Their journey had taught Liara one undeniable truth. Survival here depended not on strength alone, but on cleverness, patience, and adaptability. "You're quiet today," Eli observed, scanning the horizon. "Thinking, I suppose." Liara nodded. "I am trying to understand your methods. You humans, you approach danger differently. You do not rely solely on weapons or armies. You use your mind." Eli smiled. "It's called adaptation. You have to think, not just fight. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." Liara considered this as they moved past a rocky ridge. A sudden movement caught her eye. A massive predator taller than any Zytherian warrior, with spiny scales glinting in the sunlight. Its glowing eyes locked onto her, and its long, sharp claws scraped the stone as it advanced. Eli froze, raising a hand. "Stay calm. Watch it first. Don't act until you understand." Liara's instincts screamed to attack. Zytherians were bred to fight, to conquer, yet she hesitated, recalling Eli's lessons about observation and patience. Slowly, she crouched beside him, watching the predator circle, analyzing its movement. "See how it moves?" Eli whispered. "It hunts patterns. It's cautious but curious. If we move carefully and quietly, we can pass it without conflict." Liara took a deep breath and followed his instructions. Step by careful step, they edged along the cliffside, keeping low and moving against the wind so their scent would not reach the predator. The beast sniffed the air, hissed, and prowled closer, but the humans' understanding of its behavior kept them safe. Finally, the predator moved past, uninterested, and they exhaled in relief. Liara looked at Eli astonished. "I survived because I did not fight," she admitted. "I survived by thinking, like you said." Eli nodded. "Strength is useful, but brains often save more lives than claws or armor." The day wore on as they traversed the alien terrain. They encountered treacherous crevices and corrosive plants that burned the skin. Eli used his ingenuity again, crafting temporary bridges from fallen logs and alien vines, teaching Liara to spot dangers and improvise tools. By evening, they reached the edge of a hidden valley, lush and green despite the harshness of Varian 6. A small, peaceful river ran through it, and alien flora covered the slopes. It seemed like a sanctuary, yet Liara knew better. This world was never truly safe. They set up camp near the riverbank. Liara attempted to fish using her Zytherian skills, but her methods were slow and ineffective. Eli, observing her, smiled and demonstrated his human technique, using a small net and quick motions to catch several fish at once. Liara watched, impressed. The human method was simpler, faster, and surprisingly efficient. "You humans find easy solutions where we struggle," she said thoughtfully. "Perhaps that is why you survive." Eli laughed softly. "It's not easy, just practical. Sometimes survival isn't about glory or pride. It's about staying alive long enough to win the bigger battle." Night fell, and they huddled around the fire. Liara's injuries had improved slightly, thanks to Eli's careful tending. Yet she felt a growing unease. They were still far from safety, and she could not shake the thought of her betrayed troops, who might be hunting her even now. In the middle of the night, a rustling noise woke Liara. She instinctively reached for her weapon, but Eli held up a hand. "Wait," he whispered. A large shadow moved in the darkness, a predator, different from the one before. Its eyes glowed green, and its claws scraped the rocks, sharper and faster than any she had seen. The creature crouched, preparing to strike. Eli whispered instructions. "Use your environment. Look for anything you can use. Remember what I taught you." Liara scanned quickly. Rocks, sharp sticks, and thick vines surrounded them. She remembered Eli's lessons about improvisation. Carefully, she picked up a heavy rock and hurled it toward a nearby cliffside. The sound distracted the predator, drawing its attention. Then she used a vine to trip it slightly as it lunged. The creature roared in surprise, throwing itself back. Liara felt a thrill of fear and triumph. This was not the Zitherian way. Battles were usually fought with direct strength and trained soldiers, but it worked. She had survived using her mind, quick thinking, and the lessons from a human. Eli stood beside her, proud. "See? Clever thinking can save lives. Not every battle requires brute force." Liara exhaled, realizing the truth. Human ingenuity was a weapon of its own. Their adaptability, courage, and creativity allowed them to survive situations where strength alone would fail. She had been proud of her Zitherian power, but now she understood that survival sometimes required humility, observation, and clever action. The predator eventually retreated, discouraged by their clever tactics. Liara's confidence grew, not just in herself, but in the human beside her. As dawn approached, they continued their journey toward a rumored settlement of neutral aliens. Liara hoped for allies there, but she knew her reputation as a betrayed queen might make negotiations difficult. Yet with Eli's guidance, she felt a new sense of optimism. For the first time in her life, Liara realized that humans were not merely weaker creatures needing protection. They possessed unique advantages that could alter the course of a battle, even a war. Intelligence, strategy, quick thinking, and courage in the face of uncertainty were tools she had never fully appreciated. Eli glanced at her, sensing her thoughts. "You're learning fast," he said. "The galaxy isn't just about armies and power. It's about using what you have when you need it most." Liara nodded, feeling a strange mix of pride and humility. She had been abandoned by her own troops, betrayed in the worst possible way. Yet here, a human had not only saved her life, but taught her the value of cleverness, patience, and partnership. As they moved forward, Liara felt a spark of hope. She had survived betrayal, predators, and harsh landscapes. Now she had a chance to survive the greatest challenge yet, reclaiming her throne with new wisdom and an unexpected human ally at her side. For the first time in years, the fallen queen felt that she might not be alone in this fight. The hidden valley stretched before Queen Liara and Captain Eli Mercer, like a secret world untouched by the chaos of war. Alien plants glowed softly under the dim light of Varian 6's twin moons, and a calm river wound through the valley, reflecting the stars above. It was a peaceful place, rare on a planet scarred by betrayal and violence. "Perhaps we can rest here for a while," Eli suggested, scanning the horizon for any signs of danger. "It's quiet. Maybe too quiet." Liara gave a small nod. Her wounds had healed enough to walk without Eli's support, but she remained cautious. Her instincts as a queen were still sharp, honed by years of leading armies and navigating political intrigue. She knew that even in this hidden sanctuary, trust could not come easily. They were not alone for long. Small alien creatures, curious but harmless, emerged from the foliage, sniffing at the newcomers. Liara studied them, fascinated by the delicate ecosystem that had survived on Variant 6 despite the ongoing war. Eli knelt, showing her how to observe the animals without frightening them. "Patience and observation," he whispered. "They teach you how to survive in ways that weapons cannot." As they moved deeper into the valley, they encountered another surprise: a small settlement of neutral aliens. These beings were neither part of the Zetherian Empire nor the rival Vorid clan. Their village was simple but well organized, built from materials that blended with the natural surroundings. Guards patrolled cautiously, weapons ready, yet curiosity shone in their eyes. Liara stepped forward, her presence commanding despite her injuries. "I am Queen Liara of the Zetherian Empire," she declared. "I seek aid against those who betrayed my people and threatened the peace of this world." Villagers murmured among themselves. Neutral aliens had heard stories of the queen's betrayal. Many were wary, remembering the rumors that she had lost her throne because of weakness or poor judgment. Eli stepped beside her, his presence steadying. "She speaks the truth," Eli said firmly. "I am Captain Eli Mercer of the United Earth, peacekeeping force. I have seen her betrayed, abandoned, and hunted. She is not weak, she is brave, and she deserves support." The leader of the settlement, a tall alien with translucent skin and wide, reflective eyes, regarded them carefully. "Your words are unusual, human," he said. "Most come seeking advantage, not truth." Eli did not flinch. "I am not here for advantage. I am here to help. The Queen's cause is just, and if we work together, we can restore balance and protect this land." Liara felt a wave of respect for the human beside her. In a world where diplomacy often failed and violence ruled, Eli's courage and honesty were as valuable as any weapon. She nodded silently, trusting him to speak when she could not. After a tense discussion, the settlement agreed to provide temporary aid, food, shelter, and knowledge of the surrounding terrain. It was a small alliance, but it was a start. Liara knew that rebuilding her power would require more than armies. It would require trust, strategy, and the loyalty of those who believed in her cause. Eli helped organize the small forces of the settlement, teaching them tactics that relied on clever strategy rather than brute strength. They set traps for potential ambushes, prepared safe routes through the dangerous landscape, and established communication methods too. The morning sun rose over the valley, casting long shadows across the river and glowing plants. Queen Liara stood at the edge of the cliffs, looking down at the enemy stronghold in the distance. Her heart beat steadily, though her nerves tingled with anticipation. Today she would confront the traitors who had abandoned her and take the first step to reclaim her throne. Eli Mercer stood beside her, calm and focused. "We have the advantage of surprise," he said. "The enemy will expect strength, not strategy. We'll use that to our benefit." Liara nodded, gripping her weapon tightly. Her small army of neutral aliens, trained and guided by Eli, had learned human methods of strategy, observation, and clever tactics. They were fewer in number than her enemies, but Eli had taught them to think, adapt, and move quickly. "Remember," Eli whispered, "our strength is our mind and our coordination. Watch each other's backs and act decisively." They moved silently through the jagged terrain, using cliffs, caves, and shadows to approach the enemy base unnoticed. Liara observed her allies and felt a surge of pride. Despite being a small force, their determination and cleverness were evident. Each step brought them closer to justice. As they reached the outer perimeter, Eli devised the first tactic. "We'll create a diversion here," he said, pointing to a ridge above the enemy camp. "I'll signal the creatures nearby to distract them. While they investigate, we move in from the opposite side." Liara watched as the plan unfolded. Eli whistled softly, and a group of native predators emerged from the shadows, drawn by careful placement of food and noise. The enemy guards panicked, trying to protect their base from unexpected attacks. "Move now," Eli commanded. Liara led the small strike team along a hidden path, scaling rocks and dodging patrols. They were careful, quiet, and precise, every action guided by human ingenuity rather than brute force. The enemy soldiers were caught off guard, unprepared for the clever tactics of a smaller but smarter force. Inside the stronghold, Liara confronted her former generals. Their faces were hard, eyes filled with fear and surprise. "Liara," one of them exclaimed. You survived?" "I am alive," she said firmly, her voice echoing through the hall. "And I am here to reclaim what is mine, what you abandoned through treachery." The generals hesitated, unprepared for both her courage and the presence of her human ally. Eli moved beside her, covering her flanks and silently directing her allies. His calmness and quick thinking allowed Liara to face the confrontation with confidence. The battle that followed was not one of raw strength alone. Eli's tactics guided the smaller force, ambushes, feints, and diversions that confused the enemy. Liara led strikes with precision, using her knowledge of the base's layout. The general's arrogance and overconfidence became their weakness. At one point, Liara faced a trap set by the enemy. A hidden pit threatened to swallow her whole. Instinct and Eli's earlier teachings kicked in. She used a vine to swing across the gap, landing safely on the other side. Eli's voice rang out from behind, steady and encouraging. "See? Clever thinking can save lives where brute force fails." Liara smiled briefly, renewed determination burning in her chest. The human's lessons were now part of her, guiding her actions and sharpening her decisions. Together they moved through the stronghold, rallying the neutral alien allies and overcoming the traitorous soldiers. Eventually they reached the central hall where Liara's former throne had been desecrated. The room was littered with broken armor and weapons, a sign of the enemy's arrogance. Liara stepped forward, her presence commanding and fearless. "This throne belongs to me," she declared, "and with it, the future of our people." One of the generals lunged, hoping to strike her down. Eli reacted instantly, blocking the attack and using a precise maneuver to disarm him. The others hesitated, unsure how to proceed against a queen and a human who moved with unmatched coordination. Liara pressed the advantage. She fought not with anger, but with skill, intelligence, and strategy. Each movement was deliberate, every strike purposeful. The generals' confusion and fear grew, and one by one they surrendered. The victory was not only physical but symbolic. Liara reclaimed her throne and, more importantly, her authority and dignity. She had survived betrayal, danger, and the harshness of Varion 6. And she had done it not through brute force alone, but through the clever application of human ingenuity and teamwork. After the battle, Liara addressed the surviving soldiers and her new allies. "Today we proved that loyalty, intelligence, and courage are stronger than betrayal and fear," she said, her voice strong and unwavering. "We move forward not through fear or anger, but through unity and determination." Eli stood quietly beside her, observing her leadership. He had guided her through strategy and survival, but it was her courage and resolve that had won the day. Liara had adapted, learned, and embraced human ingenuity, making her stronger than she had ever been. As the sun set over the reclaimed stronghold, Liara looked at Eli with gratitude. "You have shown me the strength of humans," she said softly. "Your courage, intelligence, and loyalty have changed the course of my life." Eli smiled, brushing dust from his uniform. "You had the strength all along," he said. "I just reminded you how to use it differently." Liara nodded, feeling the truth of his words. Strength was important, yes, but the human way of thinking, adapting, and working with others had been the key to victory. She realized that humans were not merely allies. They were teachers, partners, and symbols of hope in a galaxy where betrayal and conflict often overshadowed courage. That night, Liara sat on her throne, restored to power but humbled by the lessons she had learned. Eli stood nearby, quietly observing the celebrations of their allies. The fallen queen, abandoned by her own troops, had been protected by a human. And through that protection she had discovered the value of courage, ingenuity, and partnership across worlds. Tomorrow, the challenges of ruling her empire would begin, but Liara was no longer the same queen who had been betrayed. She had survived, adapted, and embraced a new perspective, a perspective that combined Scytherian strength with human ingenuity. Together, they had reclaimed what was lost, and together, they would face the future. For the first time in years, Queen Liara felt that her empire's future was secure, not because of armies alone, but because of courage, intelligence, and the bond between a queen and a brave human soldier. The skies above the Scytherian capital glowed with the soft light of Varion Six's twin moons. Queen Liara stood on the balcony of her restored palace, gazing at the city below. The streets were alive with celebration. Citizens who had once doubted her courage now cheered for their queen, inspired by her bravery and determination. Eli Mercer stood silently beside her, watching the celebrations with a quiet sense of satisfaction. He had never sought recognition, yet here he was, acknowledged by an entire alien civilization for his courage, loyalty, and ingenuity. He had protected a fallen queen and guided her through danger, teaching her the value of human ingenuity along the way. Liara turned to him, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and respect. "Eli, I cannot thank you enough," she said softly. "Without you, I would not have survived, and the empire might have been lost." Eli shook his head modestly. "You survived because of your courage, your skill, and your willingness to learn. I only helped show a different way." The two of them had traveled a long and difficult path together, from the betrayal of her own troops to survival in the hostile landscapes of Varion Six, and finally, to the reclaiming of her throne. Liara had discovered the strength of humans, not just their physical ability, but their cleverness, adaptability, and courage in the face of impossible odds. Over the next days, Liara began rebuilding her empire. She implemented reforms inspired by the lessons she had learned from Eli and the neutral aliens who had aided her. Soldiers were trained not only in combat but also in strategy, observation, and problem-solving. Loyalty was honored, and cunning or deceit punished swiftly, to prevent the kind of betrayal that had nearly destroyed her. Eli assisted where he could, offering guidance on tactics, diplomacy, and human strategies for cooperation and governance. Liara listened carefully, appreciating the unique perspective of a species so different from her own. She began to see the galaxy not only as a place of power struggles, but as a network of relationships that could be strengthened by trust, courage, and intelligence. One morning, as they walked through the palace gardens, Liara addressed a gathering of her allies, neutral aliens, human soldiers, and her loyal Scytherian forces stood together, a living symbol of the power of unity. "We have survived betrayal, danger, and war," she said. "But we have also discovered something greater. Courage, ingenuity, and trust can overcome even the greatest challenges." Her words resonated across species and cultures. The humans in the crowd, led by Eli, exchanged proud glances. The aliens, who had once been neutral, now pledged their loyalty, inspired by the Queen's leadership and the cooperation between worlds. Liara realized that her empire had been changed forever. No longer would Scytherians rely solely on strength or fear to rule. They would embrace intelligence, strategy, and the bravery of individuals willing to act when others faltered. And humans, strangers, from a distant star, would be remembered not as outsiders but as heroes who had helped save a queen and an empire. Eli remained at